Hello, I'd like to thank you all for coming to One Voice Live, and it's a great comfort to me to have you all here. I'd like to introduce our celebrant, Keith Newell, and he will now take over the service. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Well, welcome to this historic and charming chapel, everybody. Let me start by again introducing myself. My name is Keith Newell. I'm an independent celebrant. It's my privilege to be here with you today as we acknowledge and celebrate Roy's life. And that privilege arises from Sue's attendance at a seminar I spoke at last year where I espoused the role of celebrants, and it was behind her invitation for me to fulfil this role today. So I hope it can help you through this part of the grieving process. This ceremony is a very important part of that process and could be considered the start after the surreal period between Roy's death and today. And that period is when you gather together not quite believing what's happened, even though Roy's death may not have been entirely unexpected. Before we proceed, let's get the usual housekeeping out of the way. Can I please ask that if you have a cell phone with you today, blessing and curse as they are, could you please make sure it's either turned off or to silent? There will be a fine of generous proportions for any cell phone that does go off during the ceremony, and one that Sue can donate to a charity of her choice. In the unlikely event of a fire or an earthquake, please follow the instructions of staff and calmly leave the chapel and gather in a safe area outside. This building has been recently strengthened, so in the event of an earthquake, probably best to drop cover and hold until the shaking stops and then exit. Our time together today is to celebrate Roy's life, what he meant to you and what you meant to him. It's time to speak of this man who shared some part of each of your lives, and you may possibly learn something that you didn't already know about him. By the wonders of modern technology and the talents of Georgie, we're being zoomed to the world today, and hopefully we have at the other end of this signal Roy's sister Hilary in Norfolk, cousins Carolyn and Ian in London, Leslie, Alistair and Natalie also in London, and friends Nana, Alex and Sophie also in London. So to acknowledge those that are viewing, I just wonder if you'd like to give a wave to the camera and just show that we all know that they're there. Welcome to all of you who've been able to join here today and share this time with us. And Georgie, of course, is filming this and putting it through Zoom, so he's not just a random filming the ceremony. So there's our first fine. At the end of the ceremony, Roy's casket will stay in place here at the front of the chapel, and you're invited to come forward and place a sprig of rosemary on it as your own tribute of farewell as you leave the chapel. Sue will remain in the chapel for some personal farewell time with Roy. And you're all warmly invited to join Sue at One Fat Bird in Marsden Village for refreshments afterwards. I met with Sue and Georgie earlier in the week, and they talked to me about a man with the nicest of nature, a very clever man, a man who conquered adversity with a determination to attain personal achievement and fulfillment in his life. He was well loved and respected by all who knew him. He was a man who set goals and achieved them. Roy was a true and proud Englishman, but he also loved New Zealand, his home for the past 50-odd years. And during this ceremony, both his heritage and the life he adapted to will be recognised both verbally and musically. Roy was especially fond of the Twizel area, where he first came to work on the hydro projects, a time when he made use of his skills and experience in surveying and developed his keen interest in engineering, and you'll hear more about that shortly. Sue has written and asked me to present Roy's eulogy, after which she will read messages received from people who can't be here today and present a poem. Sue's presentations will be interspersed with a Serbian folk song, Tiho Noći, to acknowledge Roy's connection to refugees fleeing the Balkan conflict, some of whom he assisted and became friends with, and they are with us today on Zoom. So who was Roy Frederick Dale? Roy was made in England, but it was not only England that made him. It was in equal measure his own grit, determination, intelligence, and good humour. He was born in Malden, a picturesque estuary village in Essex, in 1948. It was a time of great austerity in Britain. Rationing was still in place, and life was very grave for everybody. As a child, Roy had many health problems, including polio and the development of a severe stammer, which remained with him throughout his life. These setbacks only served to strengthen his character. He was very proud to pass his 11+ exam and gain entry to King Edward VI Grammar School in Chelmsford. He studied hard and determined to go on to higher education, but not gaining high enough grades to read civil engineering. Entry to university was extremely difficult in those days. He decided to channel his love for geography and life in the outdoors into a career in land surveying. He joined the Ordnance Survey, a branch of the British Army, as a survey cadet. This was the beginning of an engrossing career for him, which lasted 4 decades. Because of his patriotism and his admiration for his uncle and mentor, Jack Dewar, Roy joined the Royal Engineers Territorial Force as a surveyor. He was motivated by the desire to learn new skills and to travel, an early interest. It's probably also true to say that he wanted to test himself. Working abroad had always interested Roy. He had considered joining the Hong Kong Police Force, but a meeting with a group of young New Zealand nurses in the Channel Islands, among them Sue's sister Sally, turned his thoughts in a new direction. In 1973, he and his cherished Triumph Spitfire set sail for this country, and I understand that Triumph Spitfire was one of his goals. He set his mind to own one, and he did. Roy immediately began work on the Pukaki hydroelectric scheme based in Twizel. He later said that he started work immediately because the contrast between the wide, arid landscape and the verdant beauty of England was such a shock that he didn't want to give himself the chance to go home. Roy quickly settled into life in Twizel. He and the Spitfire took up autocross racing. He joined the local Anglican church and experimented with skiing and squash. He also resumed his connection with the Royal Engineers. In 1974, Sally brought Roy to a New Year's party given by their parents. Sue quickly decided that he would do nicely and set about choosing the bridesmaids. After a 2-year-long courtship, which is what we did in those days, Sue and Roy were married and set up home in Highbury, where Sue still lives today. They embarked on a life of shared interests and much travel, which lasted over 4 decades. Roy died shortly after their 45th wedding anniversary. Roy worked hard to make strides in his career, continually studying, teaching others, writing for professional journals, giving papers at overseas conferences. He developed a surveying software program with an American associate, which is still in use today. He received a fellowship from the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors in 2016. After the restructuring of Opus, Roy began his own survey company, Anglia Surveys, which he ran for almost a decade. The Army continued to be a consuming interest. Roy was often away on training exercises and occasionally on overseas deployment. It was a great satisfaction to him to receive the Defence Long Service Medal in 1996. But around the year 2000, Roy's life was significantly altered by the onset of Parkinson's disease. He has fought this bravely. In the initial stages, he continued to work and travel. Later, despite needing assistance with walking and later becoming confined to a wheelchair, he embarked on study for a degree in history at Victoria University. He completed this and went on to achieve honours in 2016. Roy loved New Zealand, its beauty and its wide open space, the informality of relationships, and the opportunities it gave him. This country shaped him just as much as his own home. He always considered himself lucky to live here. So how to sum up Roy? He was kind, he was clever, he was loyal, he was brave. He was well-mannered and courteous to the end of his days. As one Army comrade said, he always gave 100% to everything he did. He was liked by everyone who knew him. His was indeed a life well lived. Sue.
I'm just going to read some messages received from Roy's relatives in England. The First is from his sister Hilary.
So louder.
Louder. Right. The first message is from Roy's sister Hilary, who lives in Norfolk. Roy, my dear brother, remembering you especially today and for always, your determination to achieve your goals and drive yourself stubbornly and relentlessly, the yen to travel and see new places and people, plus the pursuit of more knowledge of history and geography, kept you busy. A good sense of humour and affability endeared you to many people. Also your courage in the face of adversity. The older brother type of help when we were both much younger, teaching me the basics of driving, along with car maintenance springs to mind. You were a good friend as well as my brother. We spoke the same language. In recent years, as your health deteriorated, you showed more of that courage in adversity on a regular basis. You studied and achieved to a high standard. Another example was your determination with Sue alongside to make the best of what was to be your last regular visits to this country and our vicinity, a strenuous undertaking even in good health. The thoughts and memories are many, Roy. With love, Hilly. As it is a tale, as is life. As is a tale, as is life. Not how long it lasts, but how good it is what matters. And the second message is from Roy's cousin, Carolyn, and she writes, "Oh, what amazingly fond memories I have of Have a Go at Anything Roy, my cousin. Roy was part of my childhood and a huge part of growing up. My mother, Hope, had taken Roy under her wing and encouraged her to embrace life. My father, Jack, remembers with affection Roy in his early teens learning to ride a bike on our very steep back garden, while my brother Ian and Roy spent many happy times train spotting and working on heritage steam railways together, as well as joint visits to our grandparents in Devon. Roy had many happy family holidays away with us in Scotland and France, with numerous amusing incidents travelling in convoy through rural France, pre-mobile phone days, and trying to find one another led to many amusing incidents and mishaps. Map reading, despite working for the Ordnance Survey, resulted in some interesting visits to local rubbish tips. Later on, Roy joined the Territorial Army and was based very near us, so we saw him most weekends. In order to be independent, he first learned to ride a motorbike, and then on the same licence, he was able to drive a three-wheeled Robin Reliant. With a pitch about, and especially on corners. From that, he progressed to his beloved Spitfire. Roy's adventures then took him to New Zealand. I always remember seeing him off at Heathrow Airport, providing him with 2 flags and some nostalgic British music. As usual, the size and the packing of the suitcases was a sight to behold. Together, Roy and Sue have continued to encompass all that was on offer and carried on with their travelling and sense of adventure, returning to the UK regularly on extended holidays, visiting friends and family. Despite adversity, Roy continued enthusiastically to embrace life to the best of his ability. Thank you, Roy, for all the precious memories that you have given your family and all your friends. From Carolyn and her father, Jack. Right, the second one is from another cousin, Carolyn's brother, Ian. Roy is my cousin, but he felt more like an older brother, I being some 5 years old, Roy being 5 years older than me. We used to spend time together in the early 1960s and 70s as we grew up. We spent many happy days and holidays together, in addition to the time Roy spent at weekends with my parents' home in Chipstead, going to the Territorial Army and repairing
my very noisy red Mini. We shared a love of train spotting. Steam engines still ruled in the 1960s, and we went to an annual Ian Allen we went on regular Ian Allen rail tours, actually seeing the Queen Mary docking in Southampton and taking tours of Eastleigh and Swindon engineering works. And the many holidays, sharing 3 abreast seating in Dad's Ford Zodiac to Provence one year, and as map reader in Roy's sparkling new Triumph Spitfire on a trip to the south of France in 1971. And I can't forget the 170-mile trip to Tiverton and Devon and back in the Reliant 3-wheeler, very frightening. And in Tiverton, where our grandmother lived, hiking for days and days all around the farmland. My son Alistair would like to record his first trip to New Zealand in 2005 when Roy and Sue kindly met the teenager in Auckland and took him around to see the sights. And the first trip that I made to New Zealand in 2010, when Roy and Sue showed me all the sights of Wellington, and when my wife Leslie and Natalie and Alistair met up again to reminisce with Roy in October 2018, not forgetting the day when Roy, Sue and I had a trip to Southwood Car Museum. Thank you, Roy, for so many memories and your companionship, Ian. Sorry, some of these messages are very long, but you are getting through them. Right, and this is one from the Perisic family. Nana Perisic was a very special friend of Roy's. She writes, I have been dreading this moment, knowing how much you had to deal with on a daily basis for so long, and you never complained and never lost your sense of humour and self-dignity. Not many people can do that. It's very hard to summarise these years, but I do vividly remember meeting you for the first time on the steps of the Majestic building where you worked. At that time, my first impression was that you had walked out of some British period drama set with all the look of a classic character. That day, our friendship started, extending from professional to personal and family. Your warm, sensitive, caring and unassuming personality with a touch of dry humour are all great qualities you brought to our friendship and meant so much throughout the years, not just to me, but to my family and friends too. You and Sue have become part of my family, and we, Alex and I, could not look further for a best man, and you were an outstanding best man too. And you've gone on to embrace our daughter Sophie, never missing any memorable dates or anniversaries. Outside of your work, you were a brilliant intellectual force with wide interests, a keen historian with an enviable understanding of politics and current affairs. So much so, we have never been short of conversation, and now it is a new beginning. Farewell, my friend. Thank you for being in our lives. Thank you for being a wonderful friend. Thank you for being our best man. Thank you for all your support and help to me and my family. You will be sadly missed, and you'll be in our hearts and thoughts. Rest in peace. God bless you. And Helen, who is here representing the Royal Engineers, has sent me really very nice messages from Roy's colleagues in the Army, in the Territorial Army, and this is a representative sample. Very sad. I remember Roy well. He was a quiet but diligent sapper, always friendly, good company, and nice to be around. And Hilary especially wanted a tribute placed on the coffin. She wanted the oak leaf, which is representative of England, to be put on the coffin in memory of the walks they shared in England. And I myself I would like to pay tribute to my husband. I would like to say that I'm glad that you chose to spend your life with me and that I love you very much. like now to read a poem, The Soldier by Rupert Brooke. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once her flowers to love, her waves to roam, a body of England's breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by the sons of home. And think, this heart, all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind, no less gives somewhere back the thoughts by England given, her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, the laughter learnt of friends, and gentleness in hearts at peace under an English heaven.
Thank you, Sam. It's going to have a time of reflection now as we listen to Roy's very favourite piece of music, which he played and listened to often, Beethoven's Violin Concerto.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Rachel and Roy was my uncle. And I'm going to read New Zealand by James K. Baxter. These unshaped islands on the Sawyer's bench wait for the chisel of the mind. Green canyons to the south, immense, passive, penetrated really, seeded only by the deer colours shot. Or else, in the north, tribes of shark and the octopus, mangroves, black hair on a boxer's hand. The founding fathers with their guns and Bibles, botanist, whaler, added bones and names to the land. To us a bridle, as if the id were a horse. The swampy towns like dreamers that struggle to wake, longing for the poet's truth and the lover's pride. Something new and old explores its own pain, hearing the rain's choir on curtains of grey moss, or the fingers of the Tasman pressing on breasts of hardened sand as actors find their own solitude in mirrors. As one who has buried his dead, able at last to give with an open hand.
As a celebrant, I get to hear a lot of life stories, and many of those stories make me wish that I had known that person in life. From what I've heard and read about Roy, he's one of those people. I'm sure Roy would have appreciated all the contributions to this ceremony today and the thought that Sue has put into it. But now it's time to continue without him. There's a hole in time where Roy was. A hole that for Sue and all of you who spent time with him will eventually be filled with other things, because that's just what life does. But you gathered here today, and everyone else who knew and loved and respected Roy, have memories of him which can never be taken away. So stay close, look after each other, and keep talking about Roy, because that's how he'll stay alive in your hearts and minds. New Zealand writer Joy Cowley wrote this: "For most of us, death appears as a fixed horizon, and those who pass over it leave an emptiness we must fill with a season of grieving. And yet, with our sorrow, there is also a knowledge of light, a certainty that the sense of loss belongs not to an ending, but to the limitation of our vision. Death is an experience for those left behind, not for those who are moving from one stage of living to another."
Sue and Roy and Matthew and myself have been friends since the middle of 80s, I've just worked it out. And we have a lot of very fond memories of spending Christmases together. So when Sue asked me whether I could sing a blessing today, I said yes. And here it is. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall softly on your fields. May you rest in peace. May you rest in peace until we meet again. May God hold you in the palm of his hands. May God hold you in the palm of his hand. May the stars come out to greet you as you lie your head to rest. May the moonlight shine upon you and your dreams be ever blessed. May you rest in peace. May you rest in peace until we meet again. May God hold you in the palm of his hand. May God hold you in the palm of his hand. For you, Sue.
Would you please stand? So we come now to the time when we say goodbye to Roy. We've heard a lot about this man today, and there will be more talk about him for as long as you all have breath in your bodies. This body, though, is simply the shell that carried the person he will always be to you. The spirit and the personality that made Roy who he was are not here in this casket, are not going to be cremated later today. That spirit and that personality will be with you forever. Roy, we commend your spirit to God's safekeeping, and we commit your body to be cremated, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The memories of your words, deeds, and character, and the years of companionship and friendship will be remembered always. Go now and rest in peace. And now for us, the living, it's time to leave. So take comfort from each other, shed tears and share your grief, laugh together and share your memories. And thinking of Roy, go now from this place with strength and courage. Go in peace. And I invite you to come forward and place a sprig of rosemary as you leave the chapel.
To belong to Father.
I'll just. Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, to the camera.
I have
So
technology.
no, just say
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody in England who's joining us. It's been a real pleasure to share this service with you, and thank you for sharing your thoughts about Roy. It meant a great deal to me.
So would you like us just to leave it for a few minutes? Will you just let us know when you're ready to just in case?